In this video, let me show you then how we can set up the user interface, which is, by the way, exactly the same on every operating system, so Mac, PC, or Linux. And I will show you how we can set up certain preferences to optimize our workflow. So let's go to File and then User Preferences. Let's start with Interface. And what do we have here? Zoom to mouse position. This is actually pretty useful. This means when my mouse is at a certain area in my 3D view and I use the scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out, I not zoom in actually to the center of my screen, but wherever the mouse is. This is quite good if you quickly want to zoom into a certain detail of your design. So keep this one turned on. There's also rotate around selection, which is quite nice as well. If we would rotate our view, it always rotates around the center of the 3D view. If, however, for example, an object is to the right, so you see now I'm rotating around the world. And let's go back and turn this one on. There. And then now you see I rotate around the object, but it's not necessarily centered. So what I very often do is I just go to the object and then position it at the center of my view and then rotate around it. So I don't necessarily use this actually a lot. There. Okay, let's go to editing. Here we have the undo steps. There are two ways to adjust this. Those were actually sliders. So left mouse button, click and drag. So you hold the mouse button, press down, click and drag to the right or the left. And you can set this to 256. That's the maximum amount of undo steps. Or left mouse button, click into it, and then 256, press enter. Good. Input. Now we can configure it based on if you have a full keyboard, including the numpad, or you do not have it. First thing, to select. Blender is one of the few programs that has a very unique work and select mode with how the mouse buttons are used. Blender actually uses the right mouse button to select and the left mouse button to work. So we actually want the left button to be the button we select objects with, so it is consistent basically with the majority of other applications. And then if you work on the desktop or you have a big 17-inch laptop with the numpad, you don't have to turn this on. However, if you, for example, are on a smaller laptop and you don't have the keypad, which will be useful for navigation, then you want to turn the numbers above your letters into your views. And then we can do this by simply turning this on. And then, as you can see in the pop-up, the main keys 1 to 0 then act as the numpad. Perfect. Okay, the rest we can keep for the moment. Then we can go to File. For example, here compress you want to turn on. That's always good. Show thumbnails. That's pretty nice. We can keep that. And System. Let's go to there. Okay. Let's increase this window a little bit. So based on what computer you have, and if you have CUDA installed, you will get this pop-up. So I have CUDA installed and I have two GTX 970s installed, which I use for my professional 3D rendering work. So you can select this. This is only useful for when we actually do renderings. At the beginning of the semester, we might not make use of it. So if you have actually a gaming PC at home or something like this, I have a Mac Pro from 2008 with some cards installed, then you can accelerate your render performance. We can go to Tropic Filtering. You want to set this to 16. This we can keep at automatic. This one, multi-sample, we want to keep at 16. regional overlap we want to turn on. You might ask, what is this regional overlap? You see here on the left side, this toolbar is opaque. And if I turn this on, it is transparent. And in addition, you will see that actually, how could I say that? My 3D view zooms. And that's what basically happens here when I press T. You see it hides and shows, and this adjusts the 3D view. I don't really like this a lot, so I want this regional overlap turned on, because now it's kind of like an overlay. Can turn on, can even increase those, make them really big, so no problem. Perfect. Okay, and yeah, that's basically most of the preferences. I will in the second one and also show how we can do all the inputs. Since in this course we're going to use Blender together with Fusion 360 together, and we can't really customize the shortcuts for navigating the view in Fusion, it makes sense to adjust Blender so the zoom, rotate, and pan commands in Blender matches those in Fusion. To do this, let's go to File and then User Preferences, and then we can go to Input. Let's drag this down a little bit, and we will start with the 3D view. So open this one, go to 3D view global. We can make this a little bit bigger, and then here you see rotate, move, and zoom. If you move your mouse to the right, you see this can be done via the mouse and the middle mouse button, and move is the mouse and shift plus middle mouse button. Now actually the rotate we would like to be shift and middle mouse button, and the move we just would like to be middle mouse button. So let's adjust those. To do this, we can for example go down and expand it, and then this should be middle and shift. Okay, let's go to move, and then here we simply deactivate shift. There. And then it says zoom, that's control middle mouse button. It's up to you how you want to set this up, or if you want to do it consistently, we can, for example, follow the Fusion layout, which is shift control middle mouse button. However, every mouse has a good scroll wheel, and majority of the cases I simply zoom with the scroll wheel because it's quicker than doing finger gymnastics. So let's see how this works. I also turned on my screen keys so you can actually see which mouse button I'm pressing. So we set everything up so that the middle mouse button, when I press and hold it, acts like panning around. So that's good. Up and down, left and right. When holding shift and then the middle mouse button, I can rotate around. And when I hold shift and control and then press the middle mouse button, hold it and move the mouse, see I can zoom in and zoom out. The shift and control is actually a really nice way to zoom in very finely, while most times with a mouse wheel we do bigger jumps. So I can zoom pretty fast in via shift, control, and the middle mouse button as well, and can do the same with the mouse wheel, just without having to use the other hand. The next key short we should set up is for the 3D cursor. But let me first show you what the 3D cursor is. And it's pretty unique in Blender and an insanely powerful tool for modeling and other tasks. So with the left mouse button, we can select an object. With the right mouse button, we can position this 3D cursor. But what's now this 3D cursor? Well, think about it as a marker in 3D space. So along X, Y, and Z, we can perfectly position or snap the cursor to geometry. Now this 3D cursor can have multiple functions. First, wherever that cursor is, I will insert an object. So I can position the cursor at a particular position in my design and say right there, put in an object. Okay. We can also, for example, move an object to there. So for example, let's say Shift S, snap the selected object to the cursor. You see now the object moved to where the cursor is. Let's undo this. I could also say, for example, use the 3D cursor as a pivot for rotate and scale. So if I press S, you see that it scales to the object or scales away. If I press R and Z, I rotate my cube along the global Z-axis, and the global Z-axis got moved to where my 3D cursor is. If I switch this back to bounding box and press R and Z, you see I just simply rotate the object around its own axis. Okay, so that as a quick intro. There obviously will be a lot more about everything I showed you with the 3D cursor. I just wanted to quickly give you a demo what the idea behind the 3D cursor is. So what's the problem with the current key system? Well, with the left mouse button we select, and with the right mouse button we position that 3D cursor. And this can quite often happen by accident, that you move your 3D cursor, which is not really ideal. So let's go to user preferences and then go to set 3D cursor. And you see that it is action. We can set this actually to the right mouse button. And for example, let's select control. Let's go to here. Now I press the right mouse button, you see nothing happens. And if I press control, see now it positions that 3D cursor. Perfect. Okay. We can also say shift and control, or based on the way how you want to work. Just one warning, whenever in general you adjust shortcuts here, because Blender has a lot of shortcuts, always make sure that step by step you adjust one. So for example, let's say I go to shift, go to back to the main interface, press shift and then right mouse button. Okay, that works as well. Good, so that's fine. And then maybe shift and drag, nothing happens. Let's go back to here. So control and click. No, it works, but there was something, control and I hold the mouse button and I continue dragging. You see actually there is a selection happening. So not really ideal, that situation. So this control is not as good. So I'll keep it at shift. Perfect. So this way, when you always set one key shortcut and then you check it, you make sure that there will be no conflict maybe with another shortcut. There's actually another function we can assign to the right mouse button, and that is every time when you, let's say you create a box, you can open a dialog. And then inside the dialog, you could say where the box should be, what dimensions, what rotation and scale, etc. So this command is actually called, when we go to the search function and type in redo, it's actually redo last. So if we open this one, there you see F6 and press, so keyboard. No keyboard, we will switch to mouse and then this to the right mouse button. And based on what computer you're on, Alt, or I'm on Mac OS, so for example I can actually select Command, maybe Alt, might be good for Windows. And let's go to Blender. I have the 3D cursor set to there, and I will quickly add, let's say, a circle. You see a circle got added where that 3D cursor is, and then I press Command and right mouse button, and you see, no, this is the pop-up for the add circle, And now here I can adjust, for example, values for how many vertices, the radius, location, rotation, and shuts. It's actually a pretty functional tool. So you add an object or you do a function and then you always call the dialog and then adjust it. At this point now, we are ready to customize the user interface. Blender has a philosophy that you do not have overlapping windowses, but instead it provides you one big work area, and then we can slice this work area into smaller modules, and into each module, or for example viewport, if you want to call it this way, we can load an app or show information. So for example, a big one, as you can see, and that is the 3D view. So in this big rectangle we show our 3D scene. In the smaller rectangle down here we have the timeline. So for animation this is important. Upper right corner here, this small part, that is the outliner, where basically you can see, well, an outline in all your objects. It's like an object lister. And then here we have, for example, the properties. So that's a buttons menu where you have all the buttons or property settings for rendering your object, other settings, materials, yada yada. Okay, so how do we now adjust the interface? To conserve a lot of screen space, the elements are there, but they're kind of tiny. So the problem at the beginning for beginners is that you have to be very precise with the way how you click, where you click, and the way how you move your mouse, left, right, or up, down. That's very important. So let me show you first how we can adjust, for example, the width of such a viewport. You see, when you move your mouse to the border, there will be a change to the cursor and shows you a line and two arrows. So if I now with the left mouse button click, hold, and drag left and right, you can see I can adjust the width. Here I can adjust the height or the height. You see this window and this window, they are actually inside a bigger window. So when I move this one, it actually adjusts both windows or viewports, and also here those two elements are adjusted. Okay. So let's say we would like to add another 3D viewport. Well, there are two ways. We can either vertically or horizontally slice the space. So let's say we want to cut this vertically. You see upper right corner, there's an icon with diagonal lines. You also have them here in those corners. And every time when your mouse gets over it, the mouse will turn into a plus sign. And this is now the tricky part, and where you have to be disciplined. But once you understand it, it's actually very easy. You can press left mouse button, and then if you drag to the left, so I click, hold it, and drag to the left, you will see I'm slicing or dragging out a new vertical window. If I click and drag down, it creates a new horizontal window. Now let's say by accident I created the subdivision. To undo it, just go the reverse. So left mouse button, click and move up, and you see, hey, there's now a gray arrow, and it tells you that the lower space will be joined with the upper space, or the upper space with the lower space. Let's do this. So I release my left mouse button and you see it's joined. Now I can, let's say, join this one to here. So I click on this one, left mouse button, click, hold, drag horizontally to the right, and there it joined. Okay. We can also do the same here. Left mouse button, click and hold, and drag down, release. Perfect. Okay, let's say I want this one to be full size, so left mouse button click and drag to the right, and nothing happens. So what's wrong here? Actually nothing. It's simply on the left side we have 1, on the right side we have 2. So the software can't really, you can't really merge it because the elements are not the same. However, I can first say U and U join together this way, and then I can join this. Okay, great. Now we have maximum space, but all our buttons for the properties are gone. So what we will do is, now it's up to you if you want to have everything on the left or the right side. I will move everything to the left side here, there, okay. And now, because I sliced this 3D view, I have 2 new 3D views. But I would like to have all my properties in the left window. So all I have to do is, with your mouse, go to here, click, move your mouse to properties, click, and there we are. Perfect. So only a few elements are left. You see here we have the menu on the bottom, here we have the menu on the top. Not really ideal, so here we can go and press the right mouse button, and then it says header, flip to top. You can click and it does it. Perfect. Good. Let's zoom out a little bit. You see there are 3 objects, a camera, a light, and a box. You can, to select everything, press A, and you see with A it deselected what I had selected, and when I press A again, then it selects everything. It's very common in Blender that instead of having a key for select everything and a key to unselect everything, it's just one button, and based on what you have selected, it switches between the stages and results. And now to delete everything, you can press the delete key, so not the backspace, the real delete key, or you can press X, and then you get a small pop-up and say, do you really want to delete? So left mouse button click or press enter, and that's it. Perfect. Great. Now we can maybe position this view a little bit to here. And the last thing we have to do is go to here, set this to cycles. That's the engine we will use. The last thing to set up now is the unit system, since we will use Blender to do industrial design work with it. Let's go to the scene, click on it, and then there we have the unit system. The first one is a set of presets, for example, centimeters, feet, inches, etc. And then the next one here, that's the important one. There we can set it to none. So work in a generic unit system, or set it to metric or imperial. I will work with metric since I'm used to it, and also this is a very good system for industrial design since we can work nicely with millimeters, centimeters, etc. But Blender has a very powerful unit system, because even when you're metric, but you have, let's say we work on furniture, a piece of lumber, and you need to type in 2 inches, you can actually type in 2 inches and it will simply convert it on the fly to the correct metric value as well. The grid system in Blender is also pretty nice. It actually adapts based on your zoom level. So on the keypad, or in case you're on a laptop without the keypad, then press 7. That actually will set you to the top view. And pay attention to the upper left corner. You see top view, orthographic, centimeters. In case you only see top perspective and meters, then also press 5, so you can switch between orthographic and perspective. We want to be in orthographic, so 5 centimeters. Okay, now when I zoom out, you see the grid is actually all set to 10 centimeters. If you zoom out more, now we are in meters, 10 meters. Okay, and there actually it stopped. Let's zoom in more. There are centimeters, millimeters, Yeah, okay, good. So you see the grid always nicely adjusts, and then in case you don't know what each grid means, you can also then take a look at the readout up here. So let's say we go to kilometers. Now you see actually we're actually working with 100 meters. So let's zoom in, 10 meters, 10 centimeters. So you see it doesn't actually in this case let you go into millimeters because, well, no, we work with kilometers, so obviously large objects. For nearly everything we will do in this class, I think centimeters will really be a good setting. See, now we actually in micrometers, we zoom out more, now in millimeters, centimeters, 10 meters. Perfect. Okay, great. Now, don't quit the application because then all the settings we set up are lost. What we have to do first is go to File and then go to Save Startup File or press Ctrl U. And then you get the dialog, click it, and you're good. Perfect. Now everything from the screen layout to, for example, all the different key shortcuts will be saved. To bring this to an end, I will give you a quick introduction into how we can switch between different themes, and if you want also colorize UI. You can, in a bright environment, work with a bright UI, in a dark environment work with a dark UI, or you can simply make use of the current default UI. But before we do this, press T or left mouse button click the plus to open the toolbar. Then we add a cube, and then we add another cube and move it to the side. Okay. Then let's go to File and User Preferences and Themes. Let's expand this one. So up here we have different settings. So for example, hexagon or 3D Max. There's somewhere Maya there. Modo is a very popular one. So you can select the one you feel most comfortable with. Sometimes I work with the soft image because it's nice and bright. So for daytime, this is pretty good. And I will use this one for the moment to adjust everything. So one of the problems, for example, with the grid is the grid contrast color. So my mouse wheel, when I zoom in and zoom out, you can see the grid. And based on what theme you have, this color sometimes maybe needs to be adjusted a little bit. So we can make it the same as the background color, so you don't even see the grid. Obviously, don't select too strong colors so they get distracting. Just set it to values. It's just right, easy enough to see and to work with. Okay. I, in object mode, select these two objects. Let's go back, because I wanted to show you something about object selected and the active object. Currently this is white, and if I click, for example, this one and then drag a color here, you see the right cube is blue, and that is because I selected the left cube first and the second cube second or last, which the last object you select is always what's considered the active object. And for example, here vertex select and edge select. So with this one selected, we can go to edit mode. Let's rotate the view a little bit. There you see everything is black. Nothing is selected. If I select a point, it's white. If I select an edge, it's white, or with a face, it's white. So this is, for example, what you can see here. So vertex, that is actually the point, and then the edge, well, it's the edge. So there you can also colorize basically everything. We go down a little bit to here. the one that's actually sometimes quite good to work with is the region background. You remember in the system preferences, we turned region overlap on. And this is not transparent, but I would like it to be transparent. So I can go to region background, click on this one, and then work with the transparency, so the alpha value. You could either make it completely transparent, but now you see some of the text is difficult to read, and by giving it a little bit more opacity, I enhance readability, but I can still see what is behind those toolbars. And there's really a lot more. You can even, for example, turn on a gradient, and then we can adjust the color of the gradient more. So there's now my gradient and the backdrop. I picked a color for the grid that contrasts nicely with the gradient. And in case you would like to save it, then, for example, you can click Save User Settings, or we can create a new preset, so you could always switch between them. And if all this you don't really like and you want to go back to the default, you can simply click on Reset to Default Theme, and that's it. And with the default one, definitely what we should do is adjust the grid a little bit. It's just too dark. There, this seems to work a little bit better. Okay, and I feel the region background is a tick too transparent. There. Well, we can colorize, for example, the vertex, the selected edge, or for example, the transparency of the selected face. Another pretty good element here is the vertex size. So you see the vertex are these small dots, and there's also a face dot here on the center. So with those, we can actually increase their visibility. So obviously you don't want to make them too big, so 10 might be too much, but maybe something around 5 or 7 seems to be a good value, so you can easily see where something is, and then select them. Specifically, when they're a little bit bigger, you can also see here, these are the selected vertices, and this is actually the last selected vertices, or vertex, sorry. Similar to here, the last selected object is brighter. So if we want to make this more unified, in case we work with this standard default value, then maybe we can follow the same philosophy as for the vertex select. So the last selected object is white, and then here the last selected vertex is also white. So it's nice and consistent. That's obviously not everything about how to colorize and theme your design. We can also install custom themes you can find online. So feel free to customize them. I, for the semester, will use the default themes, so everybody who installs Blender has exactly the same visual look as I have. And then I might adjust some of these colors a little bit for readability purpose, but otherwise that's the one I'm going to use. You're free to do the same or select your own one. And then to save everything, click on Save User Settings. This will save your theme stuff. And then we will go to File, Save Startup File. And then this basically, when we do this, also includes, for example, the setup of my interface. So this view layout, and also that I have, for example, this cube. So let's quit Blender and restart it. And there you see, there's a cube. Just as a small demo, I move this one up, save, quit, restart. You see that the cube is also moved up. So this is very important for you to understand. So the save startup file, it's actually not save preferences, it's actually more saving your theme and preferences, it's saving the interface layout, etc., and whatever you placed inside, for example, the 3D area. So if you have geometry there and then you click Save Startup File, this always will carry over because I don't really need this cube. I will delete it and then save it. Save startup file. So this way I always have a completely new and fresh start. And that's basically it about it.